So a big episode of NXT coming up this Wednesday night on the USA Network, and after an AEW Revolution that had multiple surprise announcements and big announcements that were heavily hyped, we've got some big announcements coming for NXT Wednesday night on the USA Network. Now Triple H took to Twitter to hype up this week's WWE NXT episode on the USA Network. Now it was previously noted during last night's edition of Monday Night Raw that NXT General Manager William Regal will have a second game-changing announcement to make during Wednesday's show. Triple H declared that this week's NXT will be epic. He said, quote, "Two of the biggest title matches in NXT history, two game-changing announcements. One word for this show, epic. Hashtag NXT on USA Network this Wednesday. Hashtag We Are NXT." Now, former DX compatriot and WWE Hall of Famer Shawn Michaels also hyped up the show, writing, quote, "I cannot wait for Wednesday. Io Shirai versus Toni Storm, Finn Balor versus Adam Cole. Not one, but two announcements. Hashtag We Are NXT, hashtag WWE NXT." Now, it's believed, because I know everyone's going to be talking about, okay, what are these announcements? What are these announcements? Are they just doing these to try and continue the hype train that was substantial for AEW Revolution on Sunday? Because say what you will about those announcements, did they let people down? Did they live up to the hype? All that kind of stuff. They made AEW Revolution trend before the show even started. I mean, we're talking hours before the show and AEW Revolution was trending. Now, is the same going to happen for NXT on Wednesday? No, it's not a pay-per-view. But NXT has certainly looked at that and said, look, if we can hype up some big announcements and we got some title matches, then maybe we can compete. And they need to do something. They need to do something and they need to compete. And I don't think, even regardless of the announcements that they make, I don't think that NXT is going to beat AEW in the ratings especially, but even in the viewership. They've been coming closer, but then they drop off again. This is the pattern when it comes to NXT. Nevertheless, what are these surprise announcements? That's what everyone wants to know, isn't it? What are these surprise announcements? What are they going to contain? What are they going to entail? Wow. Let's have a look at what they could be and what it's rumoured to be. It's believed that one of William Regal's announcements will be to reveal the new NXT Women's Tag Team Championships. Now, this, of course, has not been confirmed, but it's something that's been widely reported over the last 7 days or so, that after the success of the Women's Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic Tournament, that NXT are going to be unveiling Women's Tag Team Championships of their own. Now, in terms of that, I really don't get it. If I'm going to be honest, I really don't get it. I thought the whole purpose and the whole... one of the special things when it comes to the WWE Women's Tag Team Championships is that they could be defended across all three brands. The fact that NXT are getting their own version of the Women's Tag Team Championships just says to me that this idea that NXT is this third brand that is a level to Raw and SmackDown, that is equal to Raw and SmackDown, has kind of died off. That just isn't the case anymore. I know for a while in 2019 when NXT was launched on the USA Network or moved to the USA Network, and they had the Survivor Series event where they actually defeated Raw and SmackDown, and they had a period of time where there was some crossover with Raw and SmackDown stars coming to NXT. It felt like, finally, that NXT was being treated as a main roster entity. And I know, of course, that we're also going to have, what's it going to be called? NXT Evolve, which is essentially going to be NXT for NXT going forward. It's going to be run by Gabe Sapolsky and Jeremy Borash. They're heavily involved in that. I don't know when, where, or whatever's going on with that, but that is rumored to be starting soon. Maybe that's going to be the second announcement. Who knows? We've got some other ideas what it could be as well. We'll touch on that in a second. But when it comes to the Women's Tag Team Championships, again, it feels like to me something like WWE or certainly NXT saying, you know what, we're never going to be treated as equal to Raw and SmackDown by WWE. I don't think it's a bad thing, to be honest, that they're not, but I think it just signifies that NXT is going back to being its own thing once again. You know, you've got Raw, you've got SmackDown, and NXT, they're over here, they do their own thing. And it's kind of what we've known for a long time when it comes to NXT, because any NXT star that comes up to the main roster, that comes up to Raw or SmackDown, it doesn't matter what they did in NXT. That it doesn't hold any relevance anymore. If NXT truly meant something, then what they achieved in NXT and the status that they had on the brand would transfer over to Raw or SmackDown, and that's not the case. The character changes, the music changes, the ring attire changes, everything changes. Sometimes they're a babyface and they come on the main roster and they're a heel. Riddle, that's currently the United States champion on Raw, certainly isn't the Matt Riddle that was in NXT. The Riddle on Raw is a goofy idiot. I know he's the United States champion, and I know Vince McMahon likes him, but Vince McMahon doesn't get the Riddle character. He sees someone, he thinks he's an idiot, and he thinks, well, but I like idiots, I'm going to push idiots. Keith Lee isn't the Keith Lee that was in NXT. The NXT version of Keith Lee was the first time ever that you had a dual champion, the first time ever that you had someone that held the NXT and North American Championship at the same time. That Keith Lee isn't the Keith Lee we see on Raw every single week. The version that we see on Raw has to wear a shirt, he had to wear weird shorts, he talks differently, he walks differently, he had to change his ring music. I know there was copyright issues or licensing issues or whatever when it comes to that, I understand that, but time and time again, we see stars that get over and they're successful in NXT doing their character in NXT, and for whatever reason, once they get to Raw or SmackDown, they have to change it. And Vince McMahon's rationale is that, well, we're catering to a different audience here. We cater to a different audience, to different people. We have to do something different. And that just goes to show that NXT isn't equal. It isn't equal to Raw or SmackDown. Those changes are evidence that Vince McMahon doesn't like what he sees on Wednesday nights in terms of the product, in terms of the characters for NXT. He feels that they're catering to a different audience and they're doing different storylines, different narratives, whatever, that they have to change things. So it's not the main roster. So the addition of these NXT Women's Tag Team Championships, I guess, is just another way, I suppose, at siphoning off or moving NXT to ensure that it's not an equivalent to Raw or SmackDown. Raw or SmackDown, they've got their own tag team championships, they've got their own women's championships now, they've got their own women's tag team championships. NXT is completely separate. NXT has its own NXT title, its mid-card title in the North American Championship, its Cruiserweight Championship, and its women's tag team championships. It's got its own thing. It does feel disappointing, I suppose, but if it can help facilitate, and this is me trying to put a bit of a positive spin on it, if it can help facilitate new women's tag teams to be established in NXT that can then transition to the main roster and then improve the women's tag team championships, then I guess that's a positive. I know the argument against that would be, well, couldn't you just include the women's tag team championships on all three shows, established tag teams on all three shows, and actually have a functioning women's tag team division? That would be the easiest option, right? But for whatever reason, Raw, SmackDown, and NXT is like the FBI and the CIA. They don't talk to each other. They do the same thing, but they don't talk to each other for whatever reason because of this sort of weird. I don't know. I don't get it. I really don't get it. The difference and the disparity between Raw and SmackDown and NXT is just very odd to me. I don't think I'll ever get it. But maybe, again, trying to look at this in a positive light, maybe this can help establish and cultivate some female tag teams in NXT, which can then transition to the main roster, which can then actually help facilitate this women's tag team division in WWE, which is desperately needed. I mean, no offense to Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler, they're not tag teams. They're singles people put together into a tag team because WWE had nothing else for them at that period of time. And they have good tag team matches. That's kind of just par for the course, though, I suppose, when it comes to WWE and tag team wrestling in general. Most of the tag teams on Raw and SmackDown, not so much in NXT, but most of the tag teams on Raw or SmackDown, they're singles guys put together because WWE had nothing for them, and they think, well, maybe you'll work as a tag team. And then if they do get over as a tag team, then they have to split them up because WWE, they value singles wrestling far more than they do tag team wrestling. That's how it works. And it's the same for the women's tag team division too. So maybe this NXT Women's Tag Team Championships will help cultivate the women's tag team division in WWE. Maybe it won't. Whatever it is, it just establishes NXT as back to being its complete own entity and completely distant from the WWE. It just happens to fall under the WWE umbrella. It has nothing to do with Raw or SmackDown. Now, the other announcement, you would think that one announcement is probably going to be these Women's Tag Team Championships, but what's the second announcement going to be? These are being called game-changing announcements, big announcements, something like that. So what could they be? Well, one is a rumored 2-day takeover event that's going to happen during WrestleMania 37 week. Again, I'm not sure how I feel about that. I really don't see the necessity there. I don't see why you would want to do that. I really don't understand that one. I think given that week, given WrestleMania week, when you're going to have 2 days worth of wrestling on a Saturday and a Sunday, and they're probably going to both be 3-4 hour shows, probably. You're looking at maybe 6 to 8 hours of wrestling spread across 2 nights. We're going to have a Hall of Fame this year. It's going to be a virtual event, but we're still going to have it. We're also going to have Raw, NXT, and SmackDown on that week, and AEW, and if you watch Impact Wrestling. So you're still going to have 5 shows to watch, plus the weekend all to pro wrestling. I don't see how a takeover event fits into that. I know if this was a normal time, I know if it was WrestleMania, you'd have WrestleMania on the Sunday, then you'd have takeover maybe on the Friday or the Saturday or something like that. And that does fit. And you could say, well, you don't burn out on wrestling that weekend, so why would you burn out this weekend? I don't know. I don't see at the end of it. For instance, if say that for whatever reason, the NXT Takeover on WrestleMania week was on the Thursday and Friday, then potentially you're looking at 4 days in a row where you're watching a pro wrestling event. I'm a pro wrestling fan. I love pro wrestling, right? I can't get enough of it. But even that seems a lot to me. You don't want to be coming into those WrestleMania shows already burnt out because you've watched two days worth of pro wrestling, and you had Raw, and you had NXT that week, and you had AEW that week, and you had SmackDown that week. Where would it even fit in as well? Because they couldn't do it on Thursday or Friday, because if they did it Thursday, Friday, SmackDown's on Friday, so they'd have to do it Wednesday and Thursday, maybe, so they don't actually have the NXT that week. I don't know. That would be maybe slightly complicated, and I feel like two-day shows in the same week, if it was a bit OTT for me, I wouldn't be against having a takeover, just a one takeover day like we would have usually during WrestleMania weekend. A 2-day event, if it was maybe a little bit too much. I still personally as well would hope to have some NXT involvement at WrestleMania. It doesn't look like that's going to be the case. You would think, considering it's going to be a 2-day event, they could have some NXT involvement. Part of the excitement last year was to have some NXT involvement during that show. As much as people didn't like the finish, Charlotte Flair and Rhea Ripley for the NXT Women's Championship felt big because it was involving the third brand that was meant to be equal to Raw or SmackDown. And I think a lot of people said this year, well, if you've got all of this space on the card because you've got two days to fill, surely it would make sense to have an NXT Championship match, to feature the top NXT talent, to feature the NXT Championship, have a Finn Balor versus Karrion Kross match, have Karrion Kross win that match, win the NXT Championship, and you've already built a big star to come to Raw or SmackDown whenever he does. And WWE have high hopes for him. WWE officials have earmarked him for the main roster very, very quickly. But if he hadn't got injured, he'd probably be on the main roster right now. So that could be a different way, right? Surely of establishing him in a different way. But it doesn't look to be the case. We're not going to have NXT involvement this year at WrestleMania. We might have a 2-day takeover event instead. And obviously the other major announcement that people are considering it could be that NXT moves, and it's no longer on Wednesday nights and actually moves to Tuesday nights. So you would have Raw on Monday, NXT on Tuesday, AEW Dynamite on Wednesday, and then SmackDown on Friday. If that is the case, to be honest, it is 100% the right move. It's the move that everyone I think has wanted for at least the last 12 months or so. Since NXT had that experiment when they went to Tuesday nights over last summer, it was the NXT, was it last summer? At some point last year. It was around the time, I think it might have been actually a bit later than that, around the autumn time, because they were calling it NXT Super Tuesday shows. It was a play off the presidential political campaign, and that was going on at the time. Since they had those two Super Tuesday shows, they did really well in the ratings. I think they did about 800,000 live viewers or something like that, which is very good for NXT. And also, on the Wednesday, when Dynamite had their shows, Dynamite did close to 1 million live viewers on TNT. So both brands won. Both brands did better numbers than they do usually, and stronger numbers than they do usually, and wrestling fans weren't being forced to choose, and it wasn't this constant divide, was it? That's part of the problem with the Wednesday Night Wars that I don't think people really envisaged happening this time around. For years and years, everyone wanted the Monday Night Wars to come back, and they wanted that choice and that feeling of 2 live pro wrestling shows being on at the same time, like was the case with Raw and Nitro in the late 1990s. But I think people forgot the negative part of that. They only saw the positives of all of these people watching and the boom of pro wrestling in the late 90s that happened in the Monday Night Wars. They forgot about the tribal side of it, that people for whatever reason feel they have to pick. Oh, you have to pick WWE or you have to pick AEW. If you like AEW, you don't like WWE. If you like WWE, you don't like AEW. And you can't critique one or the other, and you can't praise one or the other. And it just made such a toxic environment, and has made for a toxic environment on social media, like that needs to be more toxic anyway. And I think people have started to realise that actually, you know what, this isn't the 1990s anymore. We shouldn't have to choose between a pro wrestling show on a Wednesday night. We should be able to enjoy Dynamite. We should be able to enjoy NXT. And I think it's better off for both shows. It's better off for both companies that they're on separate nights. And the data is there. They did the experiment last year, and NXT thrived on a separate night, and Dynamite thrived on a separate night. I don't know. I mean, I'll have to see it to believe it. My opinion's always been, when it comes to NXT moving to Tuesday nights, that I never felt Dynamite would move. I mean, initially Dynamite was going to be on a Tuesday night. It was going to be Tuesday Night Dynamite, but obviously the NBA sometimes play on Tuesday and they're on TNT, so they had to move. So it was Wednesday Night Dynamite. WWE and NXT and Triple H like to say, well, we were on Wednesday nights first, and it's kind of like, by technicality, you were a 1-hour show on the WWE Network, you were pre-taped, and most of the people watched on demand. Very rare that people watched anything live in terms of NXT streaming first time on the network. People watched it the next day or whenever they wanted. So to say that NXT always had this time slot and all that kind of stuff is a bit ludicrous. It really is. AEW was announced to be going to TNT first on Wednesday nights, and then suddenly, out of the blue, NXT becomes a 2-hour show on the USA Network, and that's always been the case. That's always been the case since the beginning of the Wednesday Night Wars, was that NXT was there to counter-program AEW. And I don't think WWE really knew what to expect. I don't know if they thought that they were going to crush Dynamite every single week. I don't know if they really knew what AEW really were going to be all about. But they haven't won really anything. Even the times that they've won in viewership, they've never really won the demo or anything like that. And after a while, and certainly at this point, it feels like, and I say this quite a lot when I talk about the Wednesday Night Wars, it feels like at this point, NXT's sole purpose isn't to beat AEW Dynamite or anything like that on Wednesday nights. NXT's sole purpose at this point is just to take viewers away from Dynamite. That's really what it is. They know at this point, WWE, they're probably not going to win in terms of viewership. They're probably not going to win in terms of the key demographic rating. But the viewers that do tune in to NXT will not be tuning in to Dynamite. And that's all they care about, really. If they can take 600,000 viewers away from Dynamite, that's a positive to them. Because if AEW Dynamite is hitting over 1 million live viewers every single week, and if they are getting 1.2 million live viewers, 1.3 million live viewers, then eventually that starts getting pretty close to Monday Night Raw territory at the moment. And the moment that AEW Dynamite starts to get really close to Raw, that doesn't look good for WWE. And from an AEW point of view, and from other companies' point of view, in terms of networks, in terms of the USA Network, they're going to be saying, wow, why are we paying so much for Raw? Why are we paying something like $1 billion for Raw on Monday nights, when this show on Wednesday night that's only been around for 18 months, 2 years, they're doing just as nearly amount of viewers and maybe even better in the demographic? Where's the value for money there? I think that's what they might say. So it's kind of a long-term strategy from WWE, isn't it? Going like, if we can just hurt the competition enough so that we can maintain our asking price for advertising in terms of the television networks and all that kind of stuff, then that's what NXT, that's its purpose. But eventually, I think they have to also look at that. It doesn't look good that they lose every single week on Wednesday. So maybe Triple H and those in charge at NXT have finally managed to convince Vince McMahon, because I think it's really Vince McMahon is the only person that wants NXT to stay on Wednesdays. I think USA Network would be much happier to have NXT on Tuesdays and do bigger numbers, have more people watching and do better ratings in the demographic, because the advertisers would be happy and the television networks would be happy. So it's always been a case of trying to figure out how to win Vince McMahon over, I think, when it comes to this, and maybe that is the case. I don't know. I really don't know what it will be tomorrow. I think it's likely to be the tag team titles and probably the 2-day takeover. I know there have been a lot of rumours about possibly NXT moving to Tuesdays. I know they've hyped it up as a game-changing announcement. That would certainly fit game-changing. I think if it was to Tuesday nights and the Tag Team Championships, that would be game-changing. I'm not sure how game-changing a 2-day takeover is, so maybe it will be the Tag Team titles and moving to Tuesdays. Either way, it's going to be interesting. Will it drive people to view NXT on Wednesday? I don't know. Nothing really does at the moment when it comes to that. They do well, but like I said, they never seem to really go over the line when it comes to AEW. It's certainly going to be interesting. But of course, as always, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on these two major announcements scheduled for NXT on Wednesday? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, talking about WWE, NXT, AEW, Impact Wrestling, New Japan Pro Wrestling, all things pro wrestling here on the channel. So be sure to get involved in the community below, drop a comment. All opinions are welcome. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button too. Really does help us out here on YouTube, got the rankings, and get to people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestling News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now, or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or have you come across this video today, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.